here to present our position paper. That is on the commemoration of the International Day of Zero Tolerance to end FGM, on the theme, partnering with men and boys to transform social and gender norms to end female genital mutilation. Again, we are here to speak on behalf of the young people of Sabei region and Karamoja region. Uganda remains a deeply patriarchal society where male dominance determines the decisions and what happens in the society. Every year, many girls and women in Sabei and Karamoja sub-region undergo female genital mutilation in fulfillment of the mandatory right of passage to womanhood. This is in addition to teenage pregnancies, forced child marriages, among others. Although these cases are increasingly happening in the community, there's no real investment in the data and research to inform planning by the district and government in general to establish the root cause of these challenges and to effectively tackle them. It's therefore important to note that violence against women and young people, especially girls, have far-reaching complications ranging from health for women and girls, including disabilities, paralysis, birth defects, psychological torture, death, dignity, and generally to the country's economy due to the unproductive population. Although national data presents that FGM statistics at only 0.3%, the statistics in Karamoja and Sabei are extremely high, with the highest percentage of 52% in Moroto district, 49% in Nakapiripirit, and 42% in Ambudat districts. Whereas in Sabei region, the prevalence is high in Buko at the percentage of 27.7, followed by Kwen at 21%, and Karamoja at 13%. When you analyze this, the issue of cross-border issue comes in, because Bukwa is close to the border, and when girls want to practice this, and the Ugandan law is so strict, they decide and run to the neighboring country. Across all the 6 districts, the prevalence is highest among women aged 45 years, above 68% in Sabei, and in Karamoja, among girls aged 10 years. In most districts, the maiden age at which girls are cut is between 14 and 15 years. The communities therefore strongly believe that their cultural identity, which is upheld through male and female circumcision, is under threat due to external forces and influence like intermarriages between the Sabine people and other communities. While it has been legislated upon, girls and women continue to be cut in sacred places such as bushes, inside the house, behind caves, while giving birth at the traditional birth attendants, and across the border in Kenya to evade the law. Worth noting is the fact that the practice has evolved over generations and has moved into a powerful spirit which can only be erased gradually. Therefore, many women and girls are eager to undergo FGM because they want to be accepted and validated in the community. When you look at the legal analysis and review of existing laws at the regional level, Uganda has a legal and policy framework to ensure FGM and GBV elimination. Among the laws and policy framework are the Constitution of Uganda, the Prohibition of FGM Act 2010, FGM Regulations 2013, Domestic Violence Act 2010 and its regulations, Penal Code Act, Guidelines for Prevention and Response to FGM, and Children's Act. In April 2016, the Children's Act amendment was passed into law, Clause 10 of the Act protects children from violence, harmful practices, and particularly from FGM, whereas Clause 11 of the Act emphasizes the responsibility of the government to provide preventive and response services for victims of violence and harmful practices, and also emphasizes the obligation of medical personnel, teachers, and social workers to report these violences to relevant authorities. Thus, the right of every child be protected from violence and harmful practices, including female genital mutilation. We are therefore glad that these laws recognize the need to protect women and girls. Similarly, the Uganda National Policy on Elimination of Gender-Based Violence 2016 and the National Action Plan on Elimination of Gender-Based Violence 2016 to 2021 aimed at addressing women and girls' rights violations. We go further to see the milestones that the young people and other supportive organizations have done towards elimination of FGM. We appreciate and recognize all the efforts by the development partners, like the United Population Funds, UNFPA, UNICEF, ActionAid, BRAC, and the government of Uganda, through the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development, for their restless support and interventions to address the vice. A number of interventions that include the following have been undertaken. 1, awareness creation. With support from district local government, UNFPA, UNICEF, ActionAid, and other partners, conducted awareness raising, reaching over 150,000 people across Sabey and Karamoja on abandonment of FGM and other harmful norms and practices. This has enlightened girls and women about their rights and assurance that they can be protected and respected without genital cuttings. We have also witnessed gender transformation from these educational interventions. The other one is establishment of community male action group structures, which is being emphasized today, to promote male engagement in transforming social and gender norms. Over 98 male action groups, young people activism groups, among others, have been empowered through positive masculinity and gender transformation capacity building initiatives. The raising movement of male champions in Sabey and Karamoja is actively supporting in reporting, doing surveillance, and engaging fellow men and boys on social norm change, as well as creation of awareness in the community. We also have public declarations. Communities in Sabey sub-region have been mobilized and supported to publicly declare abandonment of FGM and other harmful practices against women and girls. In 70% of the communities, local leaders, students, young people, mentors have publicly declared to abandon the practice, which is a good thing. We still have a battle to deal with the remaining 30% of the resistant communities to completely wipe out the FGM from Uganda. Then the other milestone is the establishment of women protection shelters. With support from various partners, such as ActionAid, UNFPA, UN Women, among others, women protection shelters have been established across the country, with only one in Sabey College, in Sabey, that is in Kwen District, one GBV reception center in Amudat, and one women protection center across under construction. The Women Protection Centers model provides integrated services to survivors of GBV, including legal aid, medical and psychological support, temporary shelter, personal safety, planning, and support to reintegration within their communities. Through strengthened partnerships and engagement with the different actors within the referral pathways, such as the Uganda Police, judiciary, district leadership, religious, and cultural leaders. Just as a coin has two sides, this fight also has got some challenges. One of them is the porous borders that promote cross-border FGM. As alluded to earlier on, FGM is practiced in the neighboring countries of Kenya and Tanzania by communities who live across the borders with Uganda. This has meant that when anti-FGM legislation in Uganda, in the Uganda side is tight, the girls and women cross over to the neighboring countries and get cut, and they return when they are healed. We also have tendencies of patriarchal resistance. FGM is still culturally acceptable as a rite of passage to womanhood for women and girls within the sub-region, creating tolerance and silence on the vice. This hinders reporting and enforcement of the legal frameworks on FGM and children's rights. In addition, harmful practices such as child marriages are still a challenge. We do also have limited resources affecting arrest and prosecution of perpetrators. Cross-border surveillance to curb movement of girls to neighboring countries to practice FGM is very weak, and this is attributed to limited resources to the respective law enforcing agencies. Inadequate capacity of the key actors to arrest and prosecute perpetrators. Despite the enactment of a specific law, of a specific legislation that criminalizes FGM among legal frameworks, prosecution of the perpetrators has proved futile due to limitations in evidence collections, the high standards and burden of proof in prosecution of case at the police and courts of law. FGM as an incoming generating activity for the surgeons is still something that is also hindering this fight. Relapses of transformed FGM surgeons falling back into the practice in secret as an income generating activity. This is being done in secret in bushes, behind closed doors in homes, or when women are giving birth. And we do also have limited access to economic opportunities and resources, especially for the young people and women. Due to the unequal economic power relations, women and girls have remained marginalized and susceptible to all forms of violence and exploitation, including forced marriages for bride price, and sometimes engaging in transactional or early sex for money to meet their basic needs. This has accounted for increasing teenage pregnancies, especially during COVID-19 lockdown, where many families lost incomes due to closure of businesses. Last but not the least, access to social services such as healthcare and GBV-related services. Some districts like Buko and Kwen do not have district hospitals, and the available health facilities are distant and ill-stocked with medicines, and some are badly understaffed. Many women, girls, and GBV survivors find it difficult to access emergency services when abused. 4, in Sabei, the available Captural District Hospital is overwhelmed beyond its capacity, as it serves about 5 neighboring districts. The situation is worsened by poor state of district roads to facilitate mobility. So there's something, the government needs to do something on that. And as young people, these are some of the alternative policy proposals for improvement and recommendations. FGM cross-border policy engagements. We recommend that the government of Uganda strengthens coordination of FGM cross-border policy dialogues, especially on the porous borders between Uganda and Kenya, for collective efforts and a harmonized commitment to end FGM. Invest in and sustain GBV shelters. Although partners have established and constructed shelters, at least one in Sabey, Moroto, and Amudat being constructed, we recommend that the government should prioritize and allocate funding for GBV or women protection centers across the country in a bid to eliminate GBV to sustain access to protection services for women and girls. There is also need to for FGM and GBV survivors rescue center in FGM practicing region. We have learned that many girls run away from Uganda to Kenya or on the streets of major cities, towns in Uganda in search of asylum from violence. However, there is no rehabilitation center to keep the survivors for a longer period and supported with skills. Skills, counseling, and possible resettlement to in other parts of the country where they can be safe. It should be noted with concern that once these girls run away from the community, they cannot be reintegrated back there. The center will also facilitate access to other integrated GBV services to victims of violence. We therefore recommend that the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development invest in construction of a rescue center for FGM/GBV survivors in collaboration with the partners and prioritizes budget allocation of integration of skilling packages in all the existing women protection, rescue and rehabilitation centers for women and girls. As I wind up, dear partners, improve investment on public service delivery such as health centers. We recommend that through the Ministry of Health, Kapchorwa District be upgraded to a referral hospital, while the health center 4 in Bukwa and Kwen be upgraded to district hospitals. As per the Ministry of Health Service Delivery Standard, that there should be a district hospital in every district. This also applies to Amudat and Nakapiripirit districts. This will facilitate access to equitable health care services, not only women or GBV survivors, but also to the entire communities. In addition, let more schools be constructed, equipped with access to free and compulsory access to education. The distance of accessing schools and the high cost of education in government schools hinders many parents in these marginalized districts to take their girls to school. As I wind up, dear people, end impunity for GBV by enforcement of the law. We recommend that the government invests in strengthening capacity of the police, judiciary, prosecution, to arrest and prosecute perpetrators and hold them accountable. Improve access to government programs to target the marginalized people in the community. We recommend that the guidelines for the programs be reviewed and ensure they are accessible, sustainable, transparent, inclusive, especially for the most vulnerable. This includes programs such as WEB, M-Yoga, PDM, where the surgeons, GBV survivors, vulnerable young people should be given priority to access opportunities and be free from financial dependency. With that, dear listeners, allow me invite my colleague to close.
Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much for that statement on behalf of the young people, and indeed it contained key messages for each and every one of us at our different roles that we play in terms of development where we come from. May we have the documentary, please?
In 2009, Uganda joined other 16 countries in Africa where FGM is practiced to put heads together to see how we put an end to FGM.
We have made sure that we've strengthened the legal policy and accountability frameworks by enacting, working with the government to enact a Female Genital Mutilation Prohibition Act. So this was enacted in 2010, and this provides the environment whereby all activities related to FGM are criminalized, and somebody can be taken to court if they allow their child to have female genital mutilation.
The second was to engage communities in social norm changes. We would move into churches, we campaigned on radio, we went to hospitals, we went to schools, we went to institutions like cultural institutions, and identified stakeholders who would continuously engage the communities by explaining the negative elements of female genital mutilation, looking forward for the abandonment.
We have seen that there has been a reduction in female genital mutilation. If you look at 2011, when the DHS, the Demographic and Health Survey, was taken in 2016, we've seen that there's been a reduction from 1.4% to 0.3% in the prevalence of FGM. And this for us is a great achievement.
The victims are young girls, aged between, actually they had now started with children, born 3 years or even less, they had started work given on those. Many women are associated with fistula, and others in giving birth, of course they have to struggle with a lot of pain, endure with a lot of pain. Of course, the body ruptures again when they are giving birth. It's like a scar, and every time you touch it, it ruptures. Secondly, the relationship between the man and the wife in their bed becomes a big challenge almost. Every time they interact, it becomes almost forceful. The surgeons, those women who are involved into the cutting, they are also feeling burdened with enforcing or imposing on those people something that has negative effects to them, and that has also occurred to them themselves. They would wish they abandoned it yesterday. Cutting is a no-go area, but how about an alternative?
I think what we have to do for them is to really provide an alternative livelihood, because this has been their livelihood, and they will need other forms of livelihood so that they don't go back to FGM. Community level, we've also registered quite a big success. We have had over 30,000 communities pronouncing publicly and denouncing FGM. And I think a great example is the Sebei chief, Mzee Cameron, who was once a firm believer in FGM and is now a champion of ending FGM.
Since we have been able to move from 1.4 prevalence rate from 2011 when we enacted the law, and in 2016 we were able to achieve results of a lower prevalence of 0.3. I believe that with these new mechanisms, which are friendly and locally developed, will be able to lead us towards abandonment of female genital mutilation.
We know what works. We've done this globally and for years in UNFPA and with UNICEF. So we need to accelerate and we need to scale up. So that is number one. The number two intervention that we have to do is really generate evidence. We have done this, but if you ask me today, how many women have you reached since 2008? We cannot answer this, and we know we've reached many. So documentation, gathering evidence and the data to inform further policy and programming will be critical.
From the national level where you see me here, I am the face of the fight against FGM. We realized that the radio stations they listen to in Sebei and Karamoja part of the areas where FGM is still pronounced, is still dominant, are areas where we don't even have radio stations. So we are working with partners to see if we can establish radio stations in those particular areas so that people can continue to listen to the information, and we shall have specific programs running almost every day. Just like we have health programs, we have educational programs, this dialogue about female genital mutilation will be on a daily basis.
Of the documentary capturing the key highlights. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. Now, please join me in welcoming the UNFPA country representative, Dr. Mary Otieno, to speak to us. And she'll be delivering a statement on the joint program on elimination of FGM. You're most welcome.
Honorable Minister of State for Gender and Women Affairs, the Ambassador of Sweden to Uganda, the Resident Coordinator, Honorable Members of Parliament, representatives of development partners, government agencies, district local governments, cultural and religious leaders, my UN colleagues, young people, the media, ladies and gentlemen. I will be reading this statement on behalf of UNFPA and UNICEF. So I think I should say Happy New Year because I know I haven't met most of you, so Happy New Year. It's not too late. Yeah. I'm honored to join you today during the celebration of International Day of Zero Tolerance of Female Genital Mutilation with the theme, Partnering with Men and Boys to Transform Social Gender Norms to End FGM. This is an awareness day marked every 6th of February to educate the public on issues of female genital mutilation, mobilize political will and resources to eradicate FGM, and celebrate achievements and preserve gains made so far in the efforts of ending FGM. Honorable Minister, ladies and gentlemen, FGM, as has been said here, is not only a harmful cultural practice, but also an infringement of human rights that violates the principles of equality and respect for human dignity. It impedes the enjoyment of rights of women and rights and girls, including sexual and reproductive health rights, and exposes women to serious health, psychological, physical, and social consequences. With rapid population growth, it is expected to further increase the number of girls at risk, adding urgency to the global and national efforts to eliminate the practice by 2030 as set out in the Sustainable Development Goals. With only 8 years or 7 remaining in this decade of action, there is potential in eliminating this harmful practice through sustainable partnerships with men and boys. Their voices and actions can transform the deeply rooted social and gender norms underpinning the practice, allowing girls and women to realize their rights and potential in terms of health, education, income, and equality. It is exciting that on this commemoration day, we are also launching the phase 4 of the global program on elimination of FGM, the Uganda chapter. To accelerate efforts to eliminate FGM, UNFPA and UNICEF in 2008 established the joint program on the elimination of female genital mutilation, Accelerating Change. This global UNFPA-UNICEF joint program on FGM is implemented in 17 countries where the practice is prevalent, which includes Uganda. Since 2008, the program has gone through several phases, with phase 3 concluded in 2021. During this time, the joint program in Uganda has attained remarkable achievements. The joint program, as you heard over the documentary, has strengthened Uganda's legal, policy, and accountability frameworks, so girls and women can exercise their rights and are protected from female genital mutilation. In 2010, the Prohibition of Female Genital Mutilation Act 2010, which criminalizes all activities related to FGM, was enacted. You also heard that communities are publicly denouncing FGM, with more than 30,000 communities advocating for the elimination of female genital mutilation in Uganda. This represents a positive shift in deeply rooted social norms. The public declarations acknowledging FGM as a harmful practice that should end in this generation. There are limited numbers of actors now involved in FGM. For instance, several cultures have changed and are now actively engaged in community mobilization against FGM, a case of a former Kata whom I met in Amudat last year. But this lady will need an alternative, a livelihood activity, because that is what she used to earn money from. And so as a government and as partners, we need to find solutions for them. The joint program has further strengthened partnerships with various governments and bolstered accountability mechanisms, particularly through close collaboration and work with the African Union and Kenya, with whom Uganda shares a border to end cross-border FGM. These are just but a few examples of the successes registered, and you heard some from the young person who spoke here. So far, progress has been clear and measurable in the field of eliminating FGM in Uganda. Prevalence of FGM in Uganda has significantly declined 5 times since 2011, from 1.4 to 0.3 in 2016. This significant reduction placed Uganda as the best performer in the fight against FGM within the 28 countries on the African continent where FGM is practiced, and I think we should be proud of that. According to the Uganda Bureau of Statistics 2017 survey, 95% of women and girls in Uganda oppose FGM. So why does it continue? This is more than double the number that opposed FGM in the last decade. So people are getting awareness that this is a harmful practice. The actions by the government, religious leaders, cultural leaders, and communities and civil society organizations have resulted in a growing opposition to FGM and a change in attitude towards the practice. Honorable Minister, ladies and gentlemen, despite this progress, FGM is still practiced in Uganda. The national prevalence of FGM seems low, as was stated by the cow from Moroto. However, the prevalence in practicing communities is still very high, with an average prevalence of 26.6%, with greater disparities at different levels, with some sub-counties having prevalence rates higher than 50%, which means this calls for a more innovative approach to tackle this practice. This phase 4 of the joint program we are launching today started in 2022 with a vision to create a world where every girl and woman has a voice, choice, and agency. I'm glad that UNFPA and UNICEF work with the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development and other actors to design phase 4 of the joint program with the theme, delivering the global promise to eliminate harmful practices, including FGM in Uganda. Honorable Minister, ladies and gentlemen, the goal of the phase 4 program is ambitious. It will be achieved through coherent principles and strategies established from the lessons learned in phase 1, 2, and 3, while building on the existing gains. The program's districts of focus are in eastern Uganda, covering 6 districts of Buoko, Kwen, Kapchorwa in Elgon region, and Amudat, Moroto, and Nakapiripiripit in Karamoja, which are the leading FGM practicing districts in Uganda. The Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development will maintain the coordination role of the joint program in partnership with UNFPA and UNICEF. Honorable Minister, ladies and gentlemen, we really need to double our efforts to eliminate this inhumane practice that curtails the potential of our women and girls. More investments must be directed to community-based programming to encourage and motivate communities to denounce the behavior, protect and promote the basic rights of girls and women. I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge and appreciate the donors who fund the global program on elimination of FGM, namely Austria, France, Iceland, Italy, Luxembourg, Norway, Spain, Sweden, the United Kingdom, the United States of America, Canada, Belgium, and Germany. These are the ones funding the global program, not necessarily here in Uganda. The joint program has also leveraged on the funding from the EU Spotlight Initiative in Uganda, which has enabled scaling up of interventions. The generous contributions and efforts have helped strengthen and sustain the efforts towards the elimination of FGM in Uganda and globally, and for this, we say thank you to the donors. In closing, Honorable Minister, ladies and gentlemen, as we age closer to the deadline of 2030 to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, which include the target to eradicate FGM, we must not let this generation down. Truly, we must not let Josiah down. Josiah, we cannot let you down. We call on all our partners and allies to commit to the collective action necessary to bring our progress. FGM can no longer be justified as a cultural or traditional practice. It is a crime and a violation of human rights. Many people and communities are abandoning FGM. Change is possible and it is happening. And so today, let us join the world in calling for partnership with men and boys to transform social and gender norms to end FGM in Uganda. Now, before I leave the podium, I would like to request that our next commemoration take place in one of the high prevalence districts so that we are talking to the concerned communities and are finding solutions together. Because I feel that we are talking to ourselves here. So that is my humble request, and we are happy to support that next year, if we all agree. And Josiah, before I leave, I consider you as my grandson, and I truly salute you. I'm proud of you and your parents, and I think we must invest in more Josiahs, because they are the ones who will transform these communities, not us. So thank you so much, Josiah. We appreciate you and continue the great work. Thank you so much.
A round of applause, the UNFPA country rep. Dr. Mary Otieno, thank you so much for those remarks on behalf of the joint program. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, join me in welcoming the UN Resident Coordinator, Her Excellency Susan Ngogi Namondo, to speak to us.
Thank you. Honorable Minister and all your colleagues from the ministry at both the national and district level, honorable members of parliament who may be here with us, Your Excellency, the Ambassador of Sweden to Uganda, all our development partners, the cultural and religious leaders, and allow me to stand on the existing protocols that have already been established. Good afternoon once again. On behalf of the United Nations, allow me to begin by expressing appreciation to the government of Uganda through the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development for taking leadership in organizing this commemorative event under the theme, Partnering with Men and Boys to Transform Social and Gender Norms to End Female Genital Mutilation. I would also like to thank my own UN family, UNFPA and UNICEF, and all partners in steering UN efforts to accelerate the promise to end female genital mutilation in Uganda. Special appreciation to the Global Trust Fund on FGM. Mary just mentioned it, but it bears repeating. And these are the governments of the United Kingdom, Finland, Germany, Iceland, Ireland, Italy, Luxembourg, Norway, Sweden, and the United States of America for the generous support towards the government of Uganda, UNFPA, UNICEF joint program on FGM, as well as the EU Spotlight Initiative on the prevention of violence against women and girls that has further enabled us to bring more partners on board to intensify efforts to end FGM. As we all know, and Mary said a very good thing, we're preaching to the converted. I don't think there's anybody in this room who would agree, who would disagree. We all know that female genital mutilation inflicts lasting emotional and physical harm on the most vulnerable members of society. It has no medical or religious justification and no place in the 21st century. It is an internationally recognized violation of the human rights of girls and women, and really we must just do everything we can to eliminate this practice. Although the prevalence of female genital mutilation in Uganda has significantly declined from 1.4 to 0.3, according to the last DHS in 2016, we still need to intensify progress, because that 0.3% that we're talking about is significant in some places. And to be able to reach the global goal of elimination by 2030, we will need to do a lot more to get to zero. Ending female genital mutilation requires more collaboration among a broad group of stakeholders, including global, regional, national, and local policymakers, civil society, from small grassroots organizations and women's rights groups to international non-governmental organizations, agents of change, from parents, teachers, health workers, to religious leaders, local leaders, as well as law enforcement and judicial officers. And as been mentioned already, men and boys have a really crucial role to play. I think the general message is we really must act quickly, decisively, and simultaneously on all fronts. And as we continue our efforts, we really have to make sure that from all fronts, as we are acting, these concerted efforts are also well-coordinated efforts. I think that's the real strength, if we can bring all of these efforts strongly together. The UN continues to be a trusted partner in efforts geared towards eliminating female genital mutilation. Since 2008, UNFPA, jointly with UNICEF, has led the largest global program to accelerate the abandonment of female genital mutilation in 17 countries. UNFPA and UNICEF have also leveraged funding from the Spotlight Initiative and UN Trust Fund for COVID-19 response to expand the services to women and girls affected by female genital mutilation. In Uganda, there has been tremendous progress of the joint program, as already highlighted by previous speakers and in the documentary. So I will not repeat all of that which has been said. And one thing I really picked from Mary is that Uganda has been one of the best performing actually on the African continent. And while we recognize that, and we should applaud and celebrate that, clearly there's still more to do. And the area where I hope, Honorable Minister, you will help guide us is the area of social norm change. When I heard our young speakers talking, there was a lot of this clearly is a cultural practice. People attach their identity to this crisis, to this practice. People have a fear of exclusion from their communities if they don't undergo this practice. So it's deep. It's very difficult to change overnight. So I know that there's a lot of progress we're making with social norm change, but I'm not sure that we all know what exactly works and what more we need to be doing. And that's an area which I wish we would invest a lot more. Social norm change, mindset change, etc. These are very difficult areas. I hope we can invest more in these areas and really pinpoint exactly what works so that we can go to scale on those things specifically. I am also glad that today we are launching phase 4 of the global program on elimination of female genital mutilation in Uganda that will see us accelerate our work to accelerate the abandonment of female genital mutilation. And I think this is our collective sign from the United Nations that we really remain committed to the elimination of this practice. The elimination of female genital mutilation and the attainment of gender equality are interdependent and mutually reinforcing goals. If gender equality were reality, there will be no female genital mutilation. So the same interventions that will end female genital mutilation will also support the power and agency of girls and women to exercise their rights, reach their potential, and contribute fully to their communities and their future. This is the world that we envision. It will take both men and women exploring and utilizing their full capabilities for us to be able to achieve the goals that we have set for ourselves. So on that, we call on the government of Uganda, all the stakeholders, all of us, to unite more around the proven strategies, to fund them adequately, and to act with more urgency. With that, I thank you very much, and I fully agree with the idea that next year we should be in Nakapiri commemorating this day. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it. Next year, Nakapiri it is. We look forward to being there. Actually, Your Excellency, this occasion and this event was meant to be held in Amudat or Moroto, but there was a small slight change in program. That's how we found ourselves here in Sheraton Hotel. Nevertheless, we have the representation of the key personalities from the district level. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for those remarks. Now, ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming our next speaker, who is from the British Council in Uganda, to deliver their remarks. Please, Mr. Phil.
Honourable Minister of Gender, Members of Parliament here present, Permanent Secretary, Minister of Gender, UN Resident Coordinator, Ambassador of Sweden, who's just leaving, representatives from the Parliamentary Committee on Gender, representatives from religious groups, civil society partners, panellists, all protocols observed. Good afternoon. My name is Philip Smith from the British High Commission. I am the Development Director for the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, formerly DFID, so you may remember DFID. It's a pleasure to be here today as the UK government joins the rest of the world in commemorating the International Day of Zero Tolerance for Female Genital Mutilation. This commemoration is part of a set of actions and conversations that the UK is engaging in here in Uganda and across the world to illustrate the urgent need to address female genital mutilation, but more importantly, to stand in solidarity with women and girls affected by this human rights violation. FGM is, as we've heard this morning, an extremely harmful and damaging practice causing severe, lifelong physical, psychological and emotional harm. At least 200 million women and girls alive today are FGM survivors, and 68 million girls remain at risk of violation. Despite this, brave women and girls are speaking out, with thousands of communities across Africa deciding to abandon FGM. Tireless campaigning by courageous activists has helped to put these issues on the agenda, and we salute the courage of activists locally and internationally working on these issues across Africa and indeed here in Uganda. Today, a girl is 1/3 less likely to undergo FGM than 30 years ago, but population growth means that if progress is not accelerated, the number of girls undergoing FGM will continue to rise. COVID has also had an impact. An estimated 2 million additional girls worldwide are at risk due to disruption to programs that have not been fully restored since the height of the pandemic. Honourable Minister, I commend the government of Uganda, particularly the Ministry of Gender, for creating the enabling environment for the elimination of FGM in Uganda. The Prohibition of Female Genital Mutilation Act and the declarations of the Constitutional Court have solidified decades-long work to tackle this harmful practice. And our conveners here today are right to recognise that the cycle of FGM can only be broken with the engagement of men and boys. Throughout UK programming, we employ a gender transformative approach with men and boys essential as allies and partners. In Sudan, for example, where 87% of women and girls are FGM survivors, we've worked with the UN to support men and boys to help reduce social acceptance of FGM by 18% over a 2-year period. Indeed, the evidence shows that men and boys play an important role in awareness raising, enabling safe environments for women and girls, and most importantly, in detecting, in reporting, and in preventing FGM cases. We're supportive and will advocate for the gender transformative approach being taken by UNFPA and UNICEF in the new joint programme on the elimination of FGM, and we're very proud to be here on the day of its launch, as the UN Resident Coordinator has just mentioned. The UK has been at the forefront of the global fight against FGM. We're proud to have co-hosted the 2014 Girls Summit in London, which helped galvanise global commitment to end FGM and child marriage in a generation. And in 2018, we announced a further £50 million UK package to tackle this issue across Africa. As a key donor and supporter to UNICEF, UK funding has contributed to the building of the integrated national protection system and development of the national child policy. Over 18 million young people were reached with messages about harms of FGM, which has had a direct effect on the reduction of prevalence to 0.3 today, as the UN Resident Coordinator mentioned. This is in addition to our long-standing support for the Africa-led movement to end FGM across the 17 most affected countries in Africa. Our funding for the UN Joint Programme here in Uganda has helped address the cross-border dynamics of FGM, as well as the training of community volunteers to strengthen prevention, reporting, referral and response to cases of FGM. The UK, the United Kingdom, will continue to support this change being led from within affected communities and do whatever we can to accelerate the pace of change and to work with advocates in communities. Ladies and gentlemen, there are 8 years remaining of the decade of action on the Sustainable Development Goals. We call on all partners of Uganda to get behind the global ambition to end FGM by 2030. Together, we can make things better for our daughters and sisters, but to do so, we must unite our fathers, our sons, and our brothers in putting an end to FGM. This is, after all, our collective responsibility. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Philp, there for those remarks, and we appreciate you so much for the support you accord to the joint program. Ladies and gentlemen, at this juncture, may we join our hands to welcome the representative of the Chairperson, Parliamentary Committee on Gender, Honorable Irene, to speak to us.
The Honorable Minister of Culture, Honorable Peace Regis Mutozi, members of Parliament present here, the development partners, local leaders from different districts, religious leaders, cultural leaders, ladies and gentlemen, protocol observed. I welcome you all to the commemoration of the International Day of Zero Tolerance to the FGM. I would like to thank all the stakeholders who have played a key role in preventing and supporting victims of FGM. FGM needs a multisectoral approach that requires all stakeholders to work as a team to end this menace. Dear members, our theme today was the right theme, that we need to involve men. Because when you look in these districts, most power centers with men, most cultural leaders are men, most religious leaders are men. Men are the head of families, and men are the end users of FGM. So for us to involve men, it means that we are going to end this practice. And therefore, I want to salute all men who are here today, because your presence alone today shows us that you are ready to work with us as women to end the practice of FGM. We all know that FGM is a violation of women's human rights and can have very devastating health consequences. As Parliament of Uganda and as a Committee of Gender, we have provided an enabling environment where a law was enacted in 2010 that criminalizes all activities related to FGM. What are the interventions that we are doing as a Committee of Gender? As a Committee of Gender, we are working hand in hand with the members of Parliament representing these respective districts. One, we are carrying out sensitization of the population in these districts. And as a committee, we have moved to these districts, we have worked with the local leaders, and we pledge that we shall continue working with them. As a committee, we have continued advocating for the increase of funding to target FGM activities so that Parliament is able to appropriate more funds. Currently, Parliament has already started the process of budgeting, and I pledge that as committee, we are going to involve other members of Parliament, we are going to involve the Budget Committee to ensure that Ministry of Gender, its budget has been fully supported. We shall continue as a committee to monitor government programs on FGM and evaluation of their outcome. As a committee, we shall continue making recommendations on areas where improvement can be made to increase awareness. And as members of Parliament, we shall continue checking the executive through the oral questions raised in the House on the prevalence of FGM and progress made. But there are some gaps that we have in the law. We've been hearing that people are now moving outside Uganda to carry out FGM. So as members of the East African community, we should fully implement a detailed legislation to incorporate the East African Act to tackle cross-border FGM and facilitate regional cooperation. There is also a need to review the law because many things have changed since 2010, and we pledge that as a committee we shall work hand in hand with the Ministry of Gender to ensure that this law has been reviewed. In conclusion, I want to thank all of you and to assure you that as a Committee of Gender, we shall continue engaging all the responsible partners since FGM takes a multi-sectoral approach requiring all stakeholders to advocate for funds, monitor for the implementation of government funds, and to sensitize the communities in the affected district. I thank all of you for listening to me and for championing this noble cause. I remain Irene Linda Mugisa, the woman member of Parliament representing Fort Portal City, and here I was delegated by the chairperson of Gender, who is not around, is doing other official duties. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable, for those remarks. And the Gender Committee is a key committee to this fight. The Gender Committee is important because that's where budget allocations for national programs are done. And therefore, it's important that the Gender Committee is moving together with us in this cause. And we appreciate you for finding time to come and be with us on this commemoration. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, at this juncture, may I take the opportunity to invite our next presenter, who is going to deliver a testimony on behalf of the male activists. My brother, please come over.
My name is Mr. Martin from Queen, and I thank everyone for, I salute everyone for his presence here, in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Here my testimony about this information under FGM. I'm Saul Martin, a 24-year-old from Kamga Village, Kona Parish, Pinyin Sub-County, Queen District. And I serve as a youth chairperson for Body of Christ Church. Due to my service in church as the youth counselor in Pinyin Youth Counselor at the sub-county informed me of the ILA Plus project in Braquin that was looking for male champions to be activists towards the elimination of FGM. I applied for the position, and I was given a chance to be a male champion since 2021. Since that time, a number of trainings have been organized for us as male champions about FGM and its effects, GBV and domestic violence, as well as the effects of child marriage. Being a leader in church, I used the platform to reach out the many youth through organizing dialogues, sport colors, to create awareness to the rest of the community on the dangers of FGM and the myths said about it during church service and new seminars organized by the church. I always been given opportunity to talk to the youth and the congregation on the dangers, stroke effects of FGM and other harmful practices. Many community members will tell their girls that no man will want to marry them, but I will give myself as an example. I'm never going to marry a cat woman because of the challenges that came up after marriage. E.g. difficulty in intimacy, and even after successful conception, there is still difficulty during childbirth. So for us, the non-married, we look for ladies who are not cut to avoid such problems. Carl Saudit will qualify them for marriage, but rather got discouraged due to the continuous awareness created to them by the male action groups that we formed since they are the fellow men stroke boys that will marry them. Through this awareness created since 2021, this past year of 2022, being an even year of cutting, there was a very low registered number of girls who were cut. The parents have also been advised to surrender their lives to Christ and leave alcoholism, which is usually a push factor for them to direct or force the girls into undergoing FGM to prepare them for early marriages. The number of victims of FGM having reduced in Queen, it has been rumored that girls are transported to Kenya and cut and then returned back to Uganda. So I suggest for cross-border dialogues and more sensitization, especially to the surgeons, parents, cultural leaders, so that FGM is totally eliminated. And due to the opportunity given to me by BRAC Ilablas, I extended this information to Porter, Swam, Uganda, where in a certain place called Westgate. And I was welcome, information I passed there, I was welcomed for that information. And I pray, due to your support, I hope we shall eliminate these practices of FGM. Many thanks goes to Ilablas project for discovering that the boys, strong male, can also champion on the elimination of FGM and other practices, and also thank them for the things they are doing in our community. Thank you. Janemas is back to home. God bless.
Very good, very good, very good. Thank you so much, my brother, for that testimony. Ladies and gentlemen, we are getting to the tail end of this. Allow me now invite just one more speaker before we have the Honorable Minister and Chief Guest to speak to us. We are going to listen to a parent who has experienced a situation of where the daughter is being, looked at for FGM and how they managed that situation. Join me in welcoming our father who is going to speak on behalf of the rest.
Our guests tonight, members of parliament, distinguished guests, all members present, ladies and gentlemen, I am Araptai Salimo Samuel from Kapchorwa. I want to give you a testimony. I am a parent of 4 girls, and Kapchorwa is a stronghold of FGM. As you know, Sabay sub-region. To resist FGM is not easy. I know it is a concerted effort. We have structures right from down as a male champion, from parishes, sub-county, up to the district. I personally, what helped me so much, what I can tell the rest of the parents is, one, it helped me because I educated my girls, stopped them from peer groups. I avoided those peer groups that used to be with them, and still went around and talked to those who used to be with them. And by now, as you go to Kapchorwa, at least circumcision has gone down compared to the rest of the districts. I was also openly speaking to them about different changes in their lives. I openly spoke to them, and they openly talked to me. That one also helped me, and we refused the negative changes. They were able to catch up. I also controlled visits. Visiting Sengas, visiting aunties, where I told them, no, that is not good, because that is where they would get those influences. So when I talked to them, they were able to stop, and in fact, as I talk now, some of them are employed. And when the community saw them, they were able to catch up, and most of them have resisted female genital mutilation. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't have much. I say, parents, let's join up hands and fight this vice. Thank you very much.
Very interesting perspective from the parents there. Crane performers, just 1 minute before we launch into the main speech. Very good, very good, very good, very good. Thank you so much for that performance. That at this juncture, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to take this singular honor and privilege to now invite the Honorable Minister of State for Gender and Culture Affairs, the Honorable Mutuzo Peace Regis, to come and speak to us. A round of applause.
The UN President Coordinator, my colleague, Member of Parliament, Honorable Linda Irene Mugisa, the country representative, UN agencies, representatives of development partners, representative of the permanent secretary, representatives from the ministry, departments and agencies, representatives from the local governments, representatives from the cultural and religious institutions, representatives from the civil society organizations, my sister, Madam Chiboa, the chairperson of the Women Council, the media fraternity, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I am privileged and pleased to join you today to commemorate the International Zero Tolerance Day on female genital mutilation. Female genital mutilation is internationally recognized as a violation of human rights, a form of violence against girls and women with multiple negative consequences that hamper their medical, psychosocial well-being, and is the worst form of degradation because it removes the human dignity of a woman and a girl. Of course, on many occasions, we talk about the prevalence rate in Uganda being the lowest, which is worth celebrating. But every time I go back to the practicing community and hear about percentages 50, 20, 30, and you only hear that the most recent one was last year, 30 from one village. How about the rest of the villages? It is still live, it is so clear, it's so demeaning and shaming. Where we are performing very well, it gives us a bit of a discouragement to continuously hear about one that happened yesterday. When you think you're moving forward, other people behind the scenes are continuing to practice the same vice that you have condemned, but you have also elaboratively talked about the negative consequences of this action. Since 2008, Uganda has been implementing a joint program on elimination of female genital mutilation. While there is progress in the legal and political sphere that has informed increased programming within the districts, I think there is where we have not touched, which we need to target. And I am happy the country representative of UN talked about going to Nakapiripiriti. I wish we were there almost every day. Maybe we would get to hear or know what else we can do. In 2019, we hosted key stakeholders from the East African community and the Horn of Africa. And I'm happy that the Horn of Africa invited themselves to our meeting after hearing that we had the strongest mechanism that had lowered the prevalence rate of female genital mutilation. They came to learn, take stock, and see how best they can also follow us. Our sisters from Somali told us they had prevalence rate of about 95%. So literally everybody is either a victim, either every female is a victim, or is a close neighbor to a victim. And therefore, every effect of female genital mutilation affects even those that have not been mutilated. I will jump through the script because I know I've already sat for like 2 hours and I found people already seated. So meaning that those who sat before me are more tired and are almost unwilling to listen, but what would I do? So as a teacher, I can read my class and know. Now, the amazing bit is that there was a study recently done, I think about 2016 or 18, that revealed that more women, about 95%, were unwilling to undergo FGM. So when this script was written to me, I asked, what were the findings on the men's side? They said the men were still positive. They still wanted it done. I am happy that during this session, men stood and prayed and even apologized. I wish they mean it. Those of us who have lived with our men for a long time, either in marriage or as brothers, we know how best they deal with us. When they know they have hurt a woman, they will not say sorry in the sitting room. They will go to the bedroom. He can even kneel and cry for as long as no one is seeing him. And as soon as he's out, and women are so good at forgiving, immediately they see the man down on his knees and crying. They say, I have forgiven you 1,000,000 times. And as soon as he walks out, they say, I have managed her. So we want these commitments made really very clear. That you will also stand out with us and speak against this vice. That you will tell your daughters and encourage your sons to say no to female genital mutilation so that they protect their sisters. And that you will allow unmarried girls into your family. We are now confronted by many challenges. While we are giving due attention to female genital mutilation now, there are also Western cultures that are also cropping in. Why this is a violation of human rights, some people think the other one is not a violation of human rights. But that is also violating our rights as Africans, but also as women. Who shall we marry if our boys go into homosexuality and lesbianship? How will society transit? How will families grow? Then what kind of dignity are we talking about? So as we sit into these conferences, we have to be very realistic to ourselves. Now, parents, this is a job that we must do. And is a job that we are not going to delegate to others. Parents must speak openly to their children about these vices. Don't wait for a senga. These days, the aunties are also hired. And while they're hired, they also have other interests. There's not only commercial, but sometimes they may not wish you well. And they could also be agents of other organs and players. I have met the surgeons myself. They are willing to abandon. They should even have abandoned it yesterday. But sometimes we talk about things and we leave them on paper. We need to develop a mechanism of bringing them together. And we should be consistent, not only addressing them on international days and we leave them to go on their own. You see, the reason why religion is very successful is that every Sunday you are committed to getting a dose. So it's like a school. Transformation in religion is like a school. You attend regularly. But when we talk about these practices, we talk about them one day, we wait for another year, and we go to celebrate zero tolerance. We can't say zero tolerance when you're only addressing it once in a year. Moving forward, I think even if I did not refer to this, we know that now this practice, from the time we became tough as government, the practice has gone underground. That's why you hear about occurrence and reoccurrence. How do they go underground? They go to sister countries who are not yet very strong about maybe reprimanding the culprits and practice it there. Unfortunately, through well-established medical facilities by people who already have studied, have been liberated mentally, and know the implications of female genital mutilation, but you find parents even paying for a service for their daughter to be cut. We went to Nakapripit one day, and while we were visiting the medical facility, on one of the tours that went with members of parliament on the Committee of Gender, they told us that they usually get to know about the occurrence of female genital mutilation when girls come to deliver. They establish they have been cut. And when they ask them, where were you cut from? Many of them have revealed that they were cut in the hospital. Some women also, when they are delivering the second and third borns, on the first day when the medical practitioners come to interact with her, she delivers, help her to deliver, they also cut them, mutilate them as well, without even their consent sometimes. I think we should say we don't want to tolerate it anymore by actions, not words. By actions. I don't know where the magistrate is, the one who reprimanded a perpetrator of female genital mutilation. A big hand of applause to you. I don't know whether they are the only magistrate there or there are many others as well that have done this, but would wish to see many of them in the dock, inside. And the answer should not only be 4, it should be 10, life sentence, but yes, go and hang there. First cut yourself before you cut others. You are depriving somebody's dignity. So if yours was also cut, I mean the other one, and 100% off, would you still function as a man? Would you? Would you love yourself to even exist? Certainly not. So sometimes it goes personal with me when I hear about female genital mutilation in this country. It's not anything we would wish to tolerate. Even one person cut alone hurts enough as though we have cut 1 million of them. So the prevalence rate, even 0.3, does not make us happy in any way. Now, our partners would wish to appeal. Since we are performing well, enable us to perform much better, such that by the next 8 years, we go away with flying colors that female genital mutilation in Uganda is completely off. And it is an example of all the countries that have been practicing the same of them in Africa, and therefore it can happen. We can eliminate it 100%. Usually, even God gives to the one who has. So those of us who have been able to achieve some milestones, please give us support and some resources. And we want to count on you because we have always done it. Now that we are getting into the phase 4, I think we know where to touch. One is that we have committed and done research on what works and what does not work. 2, we have identified even the emerging ways where they are conducting it in church under the guise of singing hallelujah, amen, praise God. They are already mutilating a girl behind the scenes. We are going to have the other strategy, of course, is the male engagement. Men, please partner with us. There is nothing sweet in that harmful practice. It was all meant to subjugate and oppress a woman. But the more you oppress this woman, the more vulnerable she becomes, the more unreliable, the more a liability she becomes to you. You can oppress her in many other ways. And of course now you know them. That even the women who are well empowered are heavily oppressed because men have learned a new mechanism of control. When you're most educated, most empowered financially, they will let you work. Come back whatever time you want. Have as much money as you want. But many of them have abandoned their responsibilities to the woman who is working. 100%. You will buy land, you will construct it, you will educate children. At the end of the day, the man is the head of. So what do you lose? Let the woman work, let her do everything for you, enjoy yourselves, but let her free. Because her freedom also frees the man and frees many other people in the family as well. If we could have a radio station in these practicing communities, I think it will do a milestone change. The biggest challenges we have had is that the radios they listen to are from the other side in Kenya, in Ethiopia, Sudan, and those are not necessarily handling FGM the hard way we have handled it ourselves. So if we could have the local radios and have my small young little son, where is my son? You come here, my little son. Where my little son speaks to the radio. When he spoke, I'm sure everybody here was moved and impressed. If he was able to speak on radio and he has his own program at his age, I'm sure he would make a fundamental change within people in his age bracket. And once I've dealt with the younger generation who will resist against the practice, I'm sure every other person would not want to engage into this practice. So thank you for being a male champion at your age. You have been very consistent. And it's not crumb work. He speaks from his mind and is very consistent in what he's doing. He's quite organized. But we want to applaud the mother. Yes, this training is from the mother. You see, traditionally, if a man was wise, they would applaud the father. And if a man became dull, they would scorn who? The mother. And this is so unfortunate. But for now, you can see the mother who has worked with him and has been with him every time. The mother would not speak. So the mother is already voicing her concerns through the son, and the son is the spokesperson. Thank you so much for playing this role. You can go and sit. So that gentleman there, the male champion, requested us for schools, boarding facilities. Government has already put some schools in Karamoja and Kwen in the practicing communities. I also remember when we were in Kapiripirit, we found some girls. It was during COVID time, it was a lockdown, when I forced our way to check on the girls who we thought we had protected back home, how they are doing. When I went to that missionary school, there were many girls behind the scenes, had gone for a call. And I saw many girls behind there. I asked, why are these girls behind? Why have they not come to join us? That you see, these are the ones who have run away from their homes and have come to the missionary for protection. You see, an environment where home becomes a danger to you. That lockdown of 2 years, the girls were so exposed to the dangerous homes. Can you imagine? A home is a place that you would feel secure, safe, happier, that owns you and you own it. But in Karamoja, in the practicing communities of FGM, the home is the unsafest place. So even if we took them to day schools or even boarding schools, there is a time when they will go for holidays. And that's enough time for anybody with a knife to remove the small thing. How long does it take? Their knives are carved, they are sharp, there's just a twist, and the change is irreversible. So we need to hide our girls, especially those that have survived and want to defy the culture where they are being subjugated with cutting. With our partners, if we can have the boarding facilities, it only requires putting up small rooms, some shelter around the school. And some of these well-wishers would be supportive. The parents who are positive, the brothers who are positive, would be supportive with food. And even if she went and picked food from home, she would have where to run for shelter at night, where she knows she has protection. There is also a friend and colleagues of mine, members of parliament, who we mobilized. They have found, they already have the buildings where we can put the radio stations. They can even support in running it, moving forward. But frequency now is becoming a challenge. So if us as development partners and government can go and get the frequency and get the machinery, they would run the radio station on their own. I think with that partnership, we would be able to move a step in the right direction to fight against female genital mutilation. We're also looking forward to amending the law. Yes, the law is young, but the emerging challenges now we have requires to be fitted into the law. The cross-border task force has to be enforced. so that we can mitigate the element of girls being moved into the cross-border to do FGM there and come back. We have to work with the peers, the young girls and boys. We need to plant some peers, like the intelligence network. All these require resources within the programming. Sometimes our resources have been threatening. Every time our partners are almost pulling out. They're almost pulling out. And they only come back when it is the 11th minute, when you almost have withdrawn from the works. This time we want a guarantee that we are going to work until we have registered completely zero prevalence of FGM. That commitment occurs, then we would also work head and tail. 8 years is not a big time, it's not a very short time. I am sure we can register this progress because we're able to drop from 14, was it 14? 1.4 to 0.3% in a few years. So I think having to register zero is not a miracle. We have tested the mechanisms, and I'm sure you have also tested the commitment we have. We are sure that we can get there in the next 8 years if we're consistent and kept on ground, not speaking to ourselves. Religious leaders, we need to work with you. Education system must integrate this into the curriculum. Luckily, there is a new curriculum. This new curriculum should integrate the issues that affect women and gender on ground within the curriculum, and we teach to both boys and girls. Now that we are out of the prairies in America, in Canada, we should get to female genital mutilation in Karamoja, in Queen, and in the curriculum of that specific area. We shall also design another curriculum here on the female genital mutilation that occurs here in Uganda and Western Uganda. We have to talk about it. I wonder why people want to keep it a secret all the time. One time I asked the members of parliament, when you were eliminating female genital mutilation, or when you are criminalizing, when you are making the constitution, why didn't you talk about this part, type 4, female genital mutilation in Uganda, and the western part of Uganda, and some eastern part? They said we would have lost it. We would have lost the debate in parliament because we were a few in number. We were 16% of the total number of members of parliament then. Now we are a critical mass of 30%. Why don't we start engaging and talking about it? When I first talked about it, the whole world was all over, until they almost made it a name. Peace Mutuzo, they only associate me with female genital mutilation because that was unheard of around here. While it does not have harmful physical harm, it gradually has. Because you are touching a girl's organs who is young, she's getting into puberty. You are showing her the direction that to keep wanting and wanting, but you are also showing her the direction of studies. Studies require commitment, a brain commitment. Even those who have not gone to school, sometimes their rights have been violated at home, but because she needs this person in the evening or the other day, she's quick either to forgive, to tolerate. By the time she realizes that I have been too violated to stay with this kind of human being, the commitments she has made are irreversible. But what does it help? Don't their marriages break? Don't the marriages of those people also break? Don't they? So what is the beauty? So somehow, it is quite resistant. Many people resist it. But let's talk about whose interests are we serving in all this? Whose interests are we serving in all this? Okay, when do they also serve our interests? What do they do so much to serve our interests? So these things of being too generous, too generous to others and not to ourselves, I am out of them myself. Because this kind of equality we are talking about will not be there. We shall not achieve it if we are not giving equal shares of tasks, responsibilities, mandates, and all that. So, for now, the cutting is the topic. But at the back of the mind, we should also know, because our daughters are also falling into traps over there. Controlling themselves is becoming a challenge. Recently, COVID revealed everything that we had hidden in secrecy. 3 million girls got pregnant once because they were kept home. So what did that reveal? Because they could not contain the pressure of the hormones that we have